Good morning, everybody. It's always a pleasure to be in Riga, even virtually. I want a little bit to extend my topic from public buildings also to workspaces, because whereas our children spend their time most of the day in educational buildings, the majority of us adults does the same at their workplaces, and it's a very important factor for the well-being. It's a very important factor what the atmosphere is in the building you spend your time. That's why I want to focus on the finished architectural results, not too much on the production process. I think nowadays it's not enough to build just in timber, but also focus on the architectural result, the quality of architecture, the atmosphere that you have in a building, the treatment of the natural light, for example. I want to start with a project that we already have done some 20 years ago in Vorarlberg, the high school in Klaus, which we extended some 15 years later with a building for daycare and the sports hall that is located in a small village in the Rhine Valley. It is two very simple compact volumes. To the left, that's the 20-year-old school, which was back then one of the first large public wooden structures, also a passive house. And to the right, you see that new addition. You see the ground floor, the school on top, and the double sports hall and the daycare facilities on the lower part. A section, a three-story structure, and the wide span of the sports hall in timber, of course. That's the southern closed facade with that prefabricated facade of large pieces. You see the school in the background, the classrooms and the daycare on the left side. One of the dining rooms in the building. The building is done with beams and CLT elements. And most of our wooden buildings have a concrete core to stiffen it, mainly for the staircases and the vertical elements. To the left of the gallery, you see 3 floors down, the basketball, that's where the sports hall is located. The structure is actually laminated beams in one direction, and then we inserted these pyramidal cones that bring in shadow-free natural light that you see a little bit better here. It's a very pleasant atmosphere in the building, very bright, even that there is just 3% of openings in that roof. Another high school in France, we moved our architectural work about 10 years ago also to France, a country that is very interested in building in timber. Of course, at the beginning there we didn't get the perfection in wooden production as we are used from Vorarlberg, but they are getting up very fast. This school is in Brittany. The quality of the craftsmanship in Brittany is quite high. So that's also a 3-story building in the outskirts of a small village close to the Atlantic Ocean. A school that is for 15 villages, so most of the kids come by bus. It's a similar spatial system as you've seen before in Klaus, a very compact body of building with an attached dining hall that is very typical for French schools. We have here a massive ground floor and 2 wooden floors on top. So to the right you see the entrance hall, the covered hall for the breaks, and to the left the dining hall. And on the upper levels we have a system of classrooms, courtyards to bring in natural light deep in the building, connecting bridges, some again vertical cores out of concrete, and a row of special classes on the upper side. A 3rd floor more or less the same. So here you see the random system of bridges that connect all the spaces. The section, the 2 wooden floors. Here it's also CLT elements with 2.7 meters by 8 meters, of course prefabricated. What is still a problem in France is that the enterprises protect the primary structures during construction time. We are used from Vorarlberg that you cover up everything and try to be as fast as possible and build vertically. In France, they still build horizontally, and the primary structure is open for 4 weeks, if not for months, which is a problem then with the surfaces. Here you see the west courtyard, and the distance, the school building on top of the daycare facilities. The entrance area where the buses arrive, covered entrance, and the 2 classroom floors. On top, that classrooms are divided by winter gardens, planted winter gardens that should provide also the right amount of moisture in the building throughout the seasons. The cladding is in Douglas fir, which is a very common tree in Brittany. Behind that large window we have the Mediathek. And inside these bridges and connecting hallways and the natural light from above, and also a view inside all the classrooms to the right. One of the daycare facilities on the ground floor. The Mediathek that I mentioned, with a wide view to the fantastic landscape there close to the ocean. And some students. It's very important for us always the communication spaces in school buildings where the kids can meet and chat, and in between the classes. That is, I think, a very important part. The French school system is still very rigid in spaces, so the hallways are the only part where you have some freedom. And for us there, it's absolutely important to have natural light and enough air in the building. Close to that, even closer to the ocean, another high school for the same client, more or less same situation in the outskirts of a little town. A larger building for 800 students, again the same system, a large bus station, large courtyard with sports facilities, a massive ground floor and 2 school floors on top. It's always the same series of spaces: entrance hall, covered porch for the breaks, and then the large dining hall to the left. And on top again, system of classrooms, special classes, and in this case a more rigid distribution for the hallways, but again bridges and light-filled atriums. Similar section. And a view from the courtyard, again covered in Douglas fir, same construction system with CLT on beams. The entrance. And inside you see it's a little bit more rigid, but still open in a system of two-story hallways with visual connections so that the students can interfere. Again, windows which let open views into the classrooms. Then from the classrooms you see the village in the little town in the distance. And here you also see the structural system, the laminated beams, and on top the CLT, which is in that case covered with Heraclite below to provide acoustical protection. Dining hall on the ground floor. And the open porch with the vast sports facilities in front. An elementary school in Vorarlberg, which is for us a very important recent project because we wanted to prove that it is still possible, even if it is necessary to have a passive house, if it is necessary to have economical costs, but still we wanted to have everything on one floor. We came to that result because you see here it's in a very, again in the Rhine Valley, more or less just single family houses around. So we try to stay on that level with a one-story building. And the secret, how we matched the energetical task and also the budget is that we have in that building just 3% of not program surfaces. Normally you have in a school 30 to 40% of space that is not part of the program. In this case, it's just 10% of it, and that means that all the programmatic surfaces are mixed, are going from one into the other, and so we don't waste any space. It's always cluster rooms of 2 classrooms, a marketplace, and other infrastructural facilities on the lower part. So it's 5 groups with 2 classrooms and special classes on top, and the sports hall on the right. So a single story section. The marketplace has a dome with a skylight, and the sports hall is sunken in the ground. An overall view from the east with the playground. The view you know from the introduction. Each group of classes, of 2 classes, has its own courtyard where they can have a gardening. They can hold classes outside with a covered porch that will be planted in the future. The structure is very simple. We have a 50 centimeter concrete base where the wooden structure is based on. Also a secret how we came into the cost budget is that the primary structure is the finished architecture. So we have these slim laminated beams on top, Heraclite as a bearing structure for the roof, and of course also the acoustical protection, and the walls are CLT elements in silver fir that have the finished surface. So more or less primary structure is the finished surfaces and the vision of the architecture. The entrance by night, that's also a little bit a higher space for the aula and the dining hall. To the left, the sports hall. One of the courtyards with the gardening of the little children. The building is very long. It's 120 meters long. That's one of the marketplaces with the dome and the skylight. That's the only space where we cladded the surfaces of the primary structure, because behind is all the techniques hidden, the ventilation. Of course, that building is, like all our school buildings, has a controlled ventilation, and also all the support for the classrooms, the technical support is hidden behind these surfaces. Whereas the classrooms, as you see, that's you see the CLT elements on the wall, which has already prefabricated all the electrical stuff. The board for the boards has integrated already the surfaces for pinning on the walls, and on top you see the slim beams with the bearing, load-bearing Heraclite on top. And the view from the hallway down to the sports hall, that has more or less the same construction system with the laminated beams and the Heraclite in between. We move over towards workspaces. That's a small office building on the banks of the Danube River for the Danube Waterway Administration and the Customs. Also a one-story wooden structure that is located right on the banks of the Danube in Upper Austria. Very simple volume, close to some storage, wooden storage elements from the past. Simple layout, to the left the customs, to the right the waterway administration, and the shared conference room and an entrance hall in the center. The base, the lifted base, is in concrete, and that's more or less the century flood limit when the Danube is flooded, mainly in springtime. So the water goes up all the way to that concrete slab. Very simple wooden structure, small budget. These vertical lamellas that reduce the impact of the sun during daytime, and a small terrace in front of the conference room. So you see again that concrete level that marks the flood limit. The terrace with a wonderful view to the Danube. The entrance area, so we have a staircase on that side and a ramp on the other side to be barrier-free. Inside, very simple, the entrance hall, the customs in the back, to the left, the conference room. So very narrow central hallway. To the right, the social space for recreation, and the common conference room with the same view as the terrace. Another small office building that is for a wooden half product supplier in Lower Austria, who sells mainly half products made out of oak that brought us to a oak facade, of course, a building that is prefabricated. So it's on the outskirts of a Lower Austrian village. Very large construction plant, but here a small building just for 12 to 15 employees. Again, a small concrete core entrance and showroom facilities, and the offices on the upper floors. It's a system of half floors connected via different staircases and the elevator. Conference facilities, event facilities on the upper floors, And here you see in the section, it's a quite three-dimensional section in the ideas of Adolf Loos, with 1.5-story spaces and single-story spaces connected in a random system. You see also on the roof 2 levels of a rooftop with wide views to the landscape. The oak facade, random openings for the different spaces, large and small openings, a 3-dimensional oak structure. And the entrance hall to the left, the concrete core and the reception desk. All the walls are clad in silver fir, also parts of the furniture. The hallway again with natural light from above, typical conference room. And the large event hall on the rooftop level. A larger working facility, one of our major office campuses for Omicron Electronics. That's a world market leader in a very special field of electronics. A workplace for 800 people, again in Vorarlberg, in the Rhine Valley, in an industrial area. A very vast 3-story structure. Our part is on the lower part of the site plan, the existing building that was there before in the north, and the connecting glass hall that will be realized in a few years. A very rigid workspace area. They all are developers, so everybody has its own 9-square-meter cell. That's nowadays a very weird, I would say, structure of offices. For everybody up to the CEO has just one of these 9-square-meter cells. And to get some other spaces we have in this connecting in that central X that you see from the left to the right, there are some adult playgrounds, very important spaces that I explain right afterwards. The section, 3 floors, conference levels on ground floor and offices on the 2 upper levels, and a common shared rooftop terrace with a lot of intensive greenery. To the right, storage and production. The southern facade of the storage area, a PV facade with some blinking colors. The primary colors are the logo of Omicron Electronics. Here, typical facade with the single cells, but a lot of courtyards and terraces to meet and for recreation. In the back, the existing facilities. To the right, again, the storage. One of the courtyards and the office cells behind it. Typical conference room on ground floor. And the hallways with the small cells to the right, but whereas they are so small, there's also in the hallway a lot of natural light from both sides. And that's one of the mentioned adult playgrounds with, in this case, a large wooden 2-story structure, 50 tons of CLT, freely carved. I'm still proud that we got permission to run this space, because actually it's a little bit dangerous to move around there, but they use it for meetings, for breaks, and for all kind of events. And the second one with a ramped earth monolith by Martin Rauch, whom you might know, and a Zeppelin by Anna Heringer, also for meetings and breaks. And this special rooftop with a series of very different skylights in different claddings and outfits, so that you have an impulse of different moving lights for the well-being during the meetings and the breaks. Another office campus in Styria for a shoe producing company, massive ground floor and a wooden upper floor. It's in Graz, next to the airport and the freeway. It's a system of round circular buildings, a large ring which houses the offices, 3 smaller cylinders for the cafeteria, the sample production and conference, and the ring, a large circular building for the outlet store for customers outside the large ring. Here you have ground floor, first floor. So on ground floor mainly production, design, cafeteria and the sample production. On the upper floor an office ring and the shopping outside. The section you see here, the upper floor in timber, CLT elements. The intention is to have the possibility to enlarge the building vertically by another floor. This is already prepared, so it will be possible when it's necessary to add within 3 or 4 weeks another office floor to double the capacity without having to leave the building at that time. So when there is a 3 months, they can add up the floor and then start working after that month again. So an aerial view from the plains of the nearby airport. The entrance area, the covered concrete slab in between the 2 buildings. A nicely greenery in the courtyard, which is of course very important also for breaks because, as I mentioned, the freeway is very close, the runway is very close. The entrance area in the ring, and typical work spaces on the upper floor, wooden columns, metal sheets on as a suspended ceiling for the cooling and heating of the spaces. Some loggias that are distributed on several parts of the ring with views to the courtyard, and a little bit more closed area in parts of the ring. And that is a view inside the shoe outlet with a structure that spans 47 meters and supports itself. That's for that David star shape. That's a construction, out of construction reasons. Back to public buildings, a sports building again in France, in Lyon, a sports hall, public sports hall for a new part of the city, entirely constructed out of wood. The special thing here is that we have an insulation in the walls with straw, so prefabricated small piled elements for the outer walls, and some laminated beams, and similar solution as in the sports hall in Klaus. These north-orientated inserts that bring in a very nice natural light to the main sports hall. It's located in an area, former industrial area of Lyon. To the left you have the Rhone river, with the new city part with the master plan from Herzog de Meuron to the left, and the Coop Himmelblau Museum on the lower left. A typical program for a French public sports hall: the large ball sports hall, the wardrobes, and on top you have a combat hall. French sports places always have the combination combat hall, ball sports. The section with the skylights and the pre-treated facade outside, wooden elements. Actually, to be honest, I don't like these pre-treated wooden surfaces too much, but here in Lyon, the mayor was not the biggest friend of wooden architecture, so for him it was absolutely impossible, the imagination, to have a non-treated wooden facade. Also, that large porch we have to cover up in France. In public areas, you have to cover up all kind of niches for security reasons. The entrance area, again, a small vertical concrete core, which also houses a small tribune, and the main space with a large northern light visual connection to the pedestrians outside, and the skylights. And to finish with, that is our largest product, that is the sports campus for the Technical University in Munich in the Olympic part. It's one of the largest ongoing wooden construction sites in Europe. It's about 200 by 160 meters, entirely out of wood, 2 floors, 17 sports halls, some auditoriums, and 6 university faculties for sports medicine. It is, as you see, part of the famous 1972 Olympics area by Danish architects. The famous stadium to the south, the Olympic Village to the east. As I said, a large program. We have a so-called Rue Intérieure that is the center of the complex, and then 4 sectors, 2 with sports halls and 2 with faculty offices, and west 20-hectare outdoor sports facilities. On the upper level, again, offices, and of course the voids for the various sports halls. To the left, also a library and a large cafeteria. In the center, the main auditorium for 700 students. So the section, as I mentioned, 2-story. The largest and highest part is the main auditorium. And what you maybe see to the left is the large span of the canopy that extends 25 meters over the track and field track. Very complicated building procedure, because the existing complex that you see, the sports halls on the right, is in full use till the new sports facilities are finished. Then we tear them down and can build the administration office area. You see, it's more or less the same color scheme. The existing complex was made out of Quatain steel. So even if you wouldn't tear it down, it would rust away and disappear anyway. So that's a building out of that period where there were done in all Europe a lot of Quatain steel buildings that didn't survive. The large canopy you see with a ramp that goes up to the terrace in front of the library and the cafeteria. This span of 25 meters is done in Kerto beams that are hold on the rear side of the cafeteria and the library to bring the forces down. These pieces were produced in Lower Austria and transported like these large wings of wind wheels on the freeway, 45-meter long elements. One of the cardio facilities inside, so the sports halls are almost finished. They were supposed to open in March. Of course, because of COVID, it is postponed to December. That is the main sports hall with a running track on the ground floor and laboratories in the back, which serve the indoor sports areas and also the outdoor sports areas under the canopy outside. A very simple structural system with these laminated beams and again a system of by small wooden beams supported Heraclit claddings. And one of the smaller sports hall with the same production system, silver fir claddings for acoustics also on the walls. Thank you very much.